Good morning, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Kelly. Thanks. We're glad you're able to join.
I'm so sorry. I don't know what exactly happened, but it just gave me the spin. So I would like to introduce myself. I'm Kelly Parkin. I'm with Employment and Social Development Canada, and I'm a health and safety officer. I'm joining you today from the unceded territory of the Syilx peoples, and I'm happy to be here. I apologize for the rookie move, and I actually don't know if you can see my presentation or not because I'm just coming to you on the phone.
Yes, I've got it up, Kelly, so you can just verbally cue me when to move to the first slide.
Awesome. Okay, great. Thank you. So we're here with the planning and preparing for return to the office, and we'll move to the next slide, please. So as a health and safety officer, we conduct worksite inspections. We offer general information sessions with regards to the Canada Labour Code, the Canada Occupational Health and Safety Regulations. The jurisdiction that falls to us is with the Band and First Nations Administration. That portion is always a federally regulated entity. Some of the other components of the First Nations are not, and the first thing that we do is look at the nature of the work. So when we're evaluating, as one of the panelists had indicated, the jurisdiction piece does get quite complicated. So we have to do an evaluation each time. WorkSafe, however, is always involved with the employer in BC as far as compensation goes. So even if you are federally regulated or provincially regulated, the WorkSafe BC will handle the compensation portion of the organization. So next slide, please. So as I said, the legislation for the federal jurisdiction falls under the Act of the Canada Labour Code Part 2. The specific legislation is the Canada Occupational Health and Safety Regulations, the Workplace Harassment and Violence Prevention Regulations, which is brand new, just came into force as of January 2021. And then also there is policy committees, workplace committees, and health and safety representatives regulations. Next slide, please. So the Canada Labour Code, the Act, actually has the duties of the employer. So at Section 124, every employer shall ensure that the health and safety of work of every person employed by the employer is protected. That's directly in the Act, and what that means is the obligation exists when the person is at work or participating in work duties. It doesn't include when they're driving to work or walking across the parking lot to work unless they're being paid. So if they, for example, if they're on travel status and they're moving in travel status, they're considered to be at work at that time. There are also general duty clauses to keep persons granted access to a worksite safe as well. So there's obligations before the employer for anyone that they're granting access to. And that could be contractors that the employer has hired to do work on the site, or volunteers, if you have volunteers coming into the site. Next slide, please. The Hazard Prevention Program. This is the general part of the Canada Occupational Health and Safety Regulations that addresses all types of workplace hazards. So COVID-19, with the reopening, this is just one of the hazards that you would use this program for. And as one of the panelists had said before, in the federal legislation, the workplace is any place where an employee is engaged in work for the employer. So this would include working from home. It includes working in the field, home care workers, for example, working for the employer on a home site of a client. That's considered the workplace for the employee. Next slide, please. So the components of the hazard prevention program, I'm just going to generally speak to these because they're important as far as the setup of the program. So there needs to be an implementation plan. There has to be a methodology selected by the employer to deal with hazard identification assessments. So there's a strategy on how you're going to do it. Then there's actually going ahead and doing the hazard identification and assessments. Once you've identified hazards, you would put in prevention measures. There needs to be training involved, and then there's an evaluation, a program evaluation of your actual program. So that happens every 3 years or anytime you make a significant change to the line of business. Next slide. So as far as COVID-19 requirements go and implementing the hazard prevention program, you need to complete an assessment related to COVID-19 in the workplace. So you're developing your preventive measures based on the actual risks and hazards that you have identified in your assessments for your specific site. Then, of course, you have to train your employees in what you've determined. As part of these measures, the hazard assessment, if you have a health and safety committee, that group would participate in the assessments and the hazard identification. So they're very involved with this portion. Next slide, please. So preventive measures, you select from items such as elimination. If you can take it out, that's always the preferred method. Or you're looking at reduction, personal protective equipment, or administrative procedures, which would include less scheduling, rotational schedule, so you have less people in the office at the same time. Engineering controls, if you can't eliminate the hazard, you would put barriers up to separate employees. Those are the types of measures that we're looking at. This includes gloves, respiratory protection. If you're using respiratory protection, respirators need to be fit tested to make sure that everybody knows how to use them properly. Not all respirators or face masks can be used by all people. Sometimes there are medical concerns, sometimes there's fit concerns. There can be limitations to how a mask is used in the workplace. So next slide. So consideration for COVID-19 falls to elements that the health authorities have put forward. With a federal employer, the Public Health Agency of Canada, also known as PHAC, is the overseeing body. And then there's consideration with the public health authorities. So the public provincial health authorities. So each province has their own health authority. When you work in a federal environment, consideration has to be given to both of these. So the protocols by the Public Health Agency of Canada may be different than what the provincial authority is actually indicating. And as an employer, you would need to consider what both of these agencies are recommending. The labor program doesn't enforce the public health orders, but we do recognize that the public health authorities are the experts in the prevention of the spread of infectious diseases. So the requirement in your hazard prevention program is that you're considering that the specialists are recommending the 6-foot distancing, the face coverings, etc. Next slide, please. Reporting requirements. The Canada Labour Code Part 2 requires employers to investigate incidents. So this incidents that cause disabling injuries. So if there's a lost time or modified duty requirement after an employee has been exposed to something in the workplace or injured in the workplace, there's reporting requirements that Labor 1070 report must be filed with the labor program, either within 24 hours if it's a serious significant event, or 14 days if it's a disabling injury. This also applies to COVID-19. So if an employer does an investigation and finds that an employee has been exposed to COVID-19 in the workplace, then a report needs to be filed with the labor program to recognize that. Next slide. So this is just an example, a reporting scenario, because the reporting can get quite complicated, especially as it relates to COVID-19. So in this scenario, the employee working in the course of employment tests positive for COVID-19, but has not been in the workplace, nor been in contact with any other employees. That's what the investigation by the employer finds. This means that the employer is required to do their investigation to determine where the exposure has occurred. But because it doesn't trace back to the employment situation, there is no hazardous occurrence investigation report required to be submitted to the labor program. It only needs to be reported if it's found to have been contracted in the course of work. Next slide. So this is the second scenario. We've got an employee A working in the workplace. They test positive for COVID-19. Employee B and employee C were both in contact with the employee A in the workplace, and employee B and C now test positive for COVID-19. Next slide. The reporting requirement will be that a hazardous occurrence investigation report is submitted for all three of those employees that have been affected in their workplace. At this point, the source of exposure for the first, the trigger or employee A, that transmission source doesn't matter to the labor program. The provincial health authorities may still be involved with their investigation on where that tracks back to. But as far as the hazardous occurrence investigation report, we only require what's occurred in the workplace. So now, in addition to the fact that you're doing a hazardous occurrence investigation report for each employee, A, B, and C, you now also have to make sure you do the additional reporting that occurs within 24 hours because you have had more than two or more employees rather, have tested positive. So anytime an incident involves two or more employees in the same incident, it is a 24-hour reportable to the labor program. So there have been some disclosure and handling questions with regards to COVID-19 and personal medical information and the Canada Labour Code and the Privacy Act. Because a hazardous occurrence investigation report is exercised, it doesn't include medical information. So COVID-19 is considered in these circumstances not a medical situation, but rather a workplace situation. So there's transmission in the workplace. Next slide, please. So this is for vaccinations. There was a joint statement put out by the Minister of Labour, the federally regulated employers, transportation and communication, and the Canadian Labour Congress regarding the role that vaccinations play in the workplace. And this link into the actual statement that went out on June 1st really does encourage employers and employees to get vaccinated. The statement encourages the employer's role in supporting the barriers to removing barriers to vaccinations and establishing procedures to allow employees to get vaccinated, possibly during work time. They're just really putting out as a joint statement that they want and to encourage all employers to encourage employees to get their vaccinations. Next slide, please. So there's guidance material that's available on the ASCC website with regards to the hazard prevention program and the guides. And also there is a COVID-19 safety plan guide available on WorkSafe BC's site that really does have a fulsome strategy on dealing with the plan. So whether you're federally regulated or provincially regulated, this WorkSafe BC guide for COVID-19 safety plans is very inclusive and thorough and can be used pretty much in any work site. The final slides. So there's contact information for myself and my colleague Melissa, who is doing the presentation tomorrow. Hopefully she doesn't have the technical problems that I did today. So you can feel free to contact either one of us. Also the general contact information there. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that presentation, Kelly. This we could ask Eyvettee, I think, if she wants to come on to video, and Eyvettee Elliott will do a quick introduction of herself and then get into a presentation there. And maybe we'll just hold all Q&As until the end of Eyvette's presentation, because we are running a little bit behind schedule for this one due to some technical difficulties. So if you do have any questions, please put them into the chat box and we'll try to address them after Eyvette's presentation. So I'll pass it over to Eyvettee. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so just to confirm, can everyone hear me and see my screen?
Yes, I can.
We can.
Perfect, excellent. Yeah. Okay, so starting off, an introduction of myself. My name is Qwuyumaat or Eyvettee Elliott. I am thrilled to be joining everyone today. I am a member and resident of the Cowichan tribes, coming from the Warm Valley, as we call it. So I'm hoping everyone's staying cool and well. I think it's about 35 degrees out. I am the owner of EverPlan. Just a little bit of my background and my credentials. I have a Bachelor of Business in HR, registered professional recruiter, CPHR candidate. Essentially, my passions are people and policy, and I've experienced working in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors, as well as First Nations governance as well. I just want to take a minute to step back. I know we're going through interesting times, so I hope everyone is staying safe and well. I just wanted to list some resources on this site. Again, we're going through a heat wave. I'm not too sure where everyone is located, but it's extremely hot here. And of course, with the Indian residential school findings, I really hope that you're leaning into your family and your supports as well. So again, I hope everyone's taking safe and well. And along with that, I just wanted to also start off with a quote as well. Everything that we go through in life is a trajectory of many different paths, and I'm excited that we were all able to cross paths today, to join and to come together and learn and share our experiences. Yeah, and so I'm looking forward to this experience. So essentially, I'm starting my presentation off from a values-based approach. I feel like as we leave the COVID pandemic, essentially we're setting the table again. In my Coast Salish language, or the Hulkaminam language, Latem, so setting the table again. I really have thrived and operated community-based work from working from the heart. So these are some Cowichan teachings that I definitely carry strong with me in all the work that I do and various projects. So working from the heart, ensuring that we work from a good headspace, that we hang those bad feelings on the door, and then we continue to operate and move forward. The principle or the teaching of slowing down. Again, we live in a fast-paced world, many moving parts, many moving pieces. A significant teaching shared with me was taking time to slow down, to do things right, and to operate with careful planning to ensure that we listen to people's perspectives and we move forward in a good way, which leads into the third teaching that I really enjoy to carry, which is swallowing. This one means working together with one heart, one mind, and one spirit. I'd like to acknowledge that, of course, many different First Nations and Indigenous groups carry a similar teaching, whether it's all my relations or saying a similar phrase in different words. And so I wanted to honor those experiences and those different ways of saying as well. And then to incorporate healing into the process. Again, in this past year and a half, we've gone through many different experiences, and each of those experiences are important, and it's heavy. We've been isolated, we've been alone, we've had many different experiences. As I've heard in the early commentary or presentations, losses for some communities, and those are heavy burdens to carry. And we still, it's amazing. First Nations and Indigenous organizations hold such strength and resiliency to move forward, and we have been for so long. So I believe it's important to incorporate those values and principles or teachings moving forward. So shifting in a little bit, stepping a little bit back from the teachings or the values-based approach, going more into the technical stuff. So when I operate within the HR environment, or when shutting down the environment that I worked in, which was First Nations government, Cowichan tribes, I ensured the approach was people-centered, always working with the staff members in mind, also considering community as well, because the work that we do is always for community. And many services are community driven. So ensure that people are always at the forefront. How is this impacting each group, and how can we best meet the needs? Which is integrating the proactive approach. So ensuring that we can play out case scenarios in our mind to address all the what ifs. And of course, we won't have all the answers, but ensuring that we have communications to ensure that we can give out consistent messaging as different scenarios come up. Again, ensuring the process is inclusive as we return back, that everyone is involved, is participatory, and everyone feels included in the process. So again, going into that engaging piece, which we'll go into a little bit later, but ensuring that people are heard and people are valued. So I think that's a fundamental piece to ensure as we return back to the office. Again, we've gone through so much in what seems like a long time, but really it's been a short period of time. So putting all those seeds into our basket and moving forward together. Important consideration. So this list is by no means inclusive of everything, but ensuring that as we go back to the workplace, that we update and revise these work plans. I feel like these are critical documents that can be consistently referenced, or at least stored in a centralized place where they can be easily accessed, ensuring that they are the play-by-play. I know some people like the imagery of playing sports. Well, our teams and our organizations need to know how to act, where they need to be in order to orchestrate a wonderful game or win the game, essentially. So really, they're your play-by-play documents, or I'm not too familiar with sports, but that's hockey, baseball, whatever you want to think about. Which also translates into workplace procedures. Again, as we go back to the workplace, as we learn how to interact again, what steps do we need to take? Because for me, it was an interesting experience to go back into workplace. What can I do? What can I not do? And there's anxiety with that as well. So ensuring that we have documents that we can fall back on, because our heads are going to be in so many different places. Because I know for me, as an employee, as you know, the different roles that I step into, it's just good to know that we have something to lean into, because we're thinking about family, friends, where we need to be. Do we have a mask? Do we not have a mask? Sanitizer or not sanitizer? What can we do to keep ourselves safe? And then, of course, increased meetings and communications, I believe, was essential to ensure that there's a maintaining team cohesion, to ensure that everyone feels involved, that they have a say. I want to reiterate the importance of two-way communication to ensure that although as leaders or influencers, whether informal or formal, that we ensure that people feel heard. The people need to allow to create space. I feel like the animosity or the bumps in the road come from a lack of a place to appropriately express ourselves, or to maybe choose other avenues. So I feel like as, again, leaders of organizations, to be that central point or to create avenues in which staff, managers are confident where they can get some answers. And if there isn't any answers for new or emerging issues, a pathway to resolve those, to ensure that as things come up, as many things will come up over the summer, that we can problem solve collectively, and that there's assurance with our leadership team, management team, as we go along the way. Again, be confident, provide reassurance. I think essentially through this pandemic, one of the key takeaways for me at least was uncertainty is the only certainty. And if we lean into each other, we can resolve many issues. But I feel like as we continue to move forward, as at least as I witness, is if we walk together, if we lean into each other, we'll, just as we went into it, we can walk out of it unified and stronger than before, because Indigenous and First Nations resilience is fairly strong. And so again, that comes with the reassurance. Although we might get in the thick of the mud, we will get out. I think, as highlighted this morning, mental health, and so building off of this discussion, I don't want to repeat too much. Everyone works differently. We're all on different healing paths. We're all on different journeys. And as we walk along together, I feel like key takeaways for this section is whenever possible to reduce the COVID stigma. I think I've witnessed and I've heard in many different communities, especially on my Vancouver Island here, is there at times there could be stigma. So ensuring that we don't isolate, because I feel like isolating is the worst thing we can do. And ensuring that we have adequate resources so there isn't too many myths or stuff happening. I feel like as the common cold will emerge, we definitely need pathways to communicate appropriately. Because I feel like in the workplace, we wouldn't want to miscategorize someone who has the common cold and stigmatize them with the COVID stuff. So ensuring that we're proactive and finding solutions to ensure staff and managers and leadership feel supported when these issues arise, and that they are equipped with the right information at the right time and are able to work forward together. As I said before, two-way communications, let's listen to people, and I think the big key takeaway is to ensure that we provide clear expectations, whether we continue to have staff working at home, whether people are in the office, to ensure whatever the pathway is, people need to know what's expected of them. How do we check in? How do we not check in? How do we take time off? What do we do in the absence? So again, thinking about the case studies, because each community will be different. What works for one community may not necessarily work for another community, but ensuring, again, staff feel supported. And I feel like a big thing, at least what I've witnessed in my own community, is leading by example, and a big emphasis on work-life balance to ensure that everyone is still maintaining a certain level of balance between the two, because again, many people have stepped up throughout the pandemic. I've seen amazing things with many different communities where people are readily available to provide resources, that they're opening up emergency shelters, that they're taking time to ensure the safety of community members, and ensuring that we create space to promote their wellness as well, and ensuring that staff feel safe enough to take time for themselves. So again, making those expectations clear, engaging in two-way communication. And just a little tidbit here, I feel like as we go forward, some of this information could be, maybe, I always just find it's good to reiterate certain key messaging to continuously learn, because we might learn something along the way or get reminders that we need. So how to check in, I feel like as we continue to move forward, to consider the spiritual, mental, physical, and emotional. I know this is a practice of maybe more Eastern Canada, but I feel like it still holds strong space as we live out here on the coast. And what I found to be good pillars of success in moving through the COVID transitioning is making check-ins a priority to ensure that staff and managers feel valued as we continue working and wondering, are we doing things right? Are we taking all the steps that we need to take? And as HR professionals as well, we need to take time to create space for our own well-being. So taking time to debrief, reach out, and lean into our supports. to be a coach or not a dictator. But again, that goes with two-way communication. I feel like dictator is probably not the right word, but at the same time, emphasizing that we're working together. It is a play-by-play. We are playing this game, not game, but we're in the field together trying to problem solve. Different ways to ask staff, how can I be a resource? I feel like there's different demographics on how we cater to maybe older workers, younger workers, middle workers, and each approach is going to be different. And so ensuring that we can meet and prepare our staff, I feel like we can minimize future bumps in the road. And I guess just going through the list here, again, listening, emphasizing strengths, being personable, and allowing people to share their experience and honor where they're coming from. And then whenever applicable, providing resources. I feel like EAPs have been a strong resource throughout the pandemic, but maybe engaging in other services or advocating for different options as we try to maintain wellness and well-being, and ensuring that we become comfortable in public spaces, coping with anxiety, dealing with stress, and as many people and families move through with it, how they can handle the different childcare and family and elder responsibilities as well. So returning back to work, building a sense of community, start communications early to ensure that we can have our roadmaps, our different phases, through emails, newsletters, or conference calls to ensure that everyone's on the same page. I found something an effective tool is to create frequently asked questions to really, again, think about the different scenarios in which staff may encounter, to set up the office, maybe take pictures so it's not too scary if the layout's different or things have changed drastically. How can we ensure that people feel safe and prepared, and ensuring that we have the appropriate policies or guidelines for when we return, so the expectations are clear, so there's no disruptions or potential conflicts or miscommunications, because many things are changing. And although it may seem like a clear path for the parents who may have children at home, their mind might be somewhere else, or for someone who's taking care of their parents or different elders in their home. Again, although they maybe attended the meeting, it should be clear. It's important to ensure that they fully understand, because there's many distractions as we work from home, and ensuring that we take the time to check in, ensure people fully understand and have that they're equipped and they're ready to be going back. I feel like although many people may not be comfortable going back to the work environment, I feel like it's essential to ensure we build, again, that team cohesion, that where I used to work at Couch and Tribes, it was a family, and that we, again, lean and support each other. And although there's that anxiety and stress, there's many benefits for being in the office and spending time together. And so again, just ensuring that we can address those potential concerns in a meaningful way. So I know I rushed through with that, but I just wanted to say thank you very much for listening and taking the time. And it's the end of my presentation, so I'm welcome questions.
That's awesome. Thank you very much, Eyvettee. And again, we do apologize to everybody in the room today. We did have some technical difficulties getting Kelly in the room. So we do apologize for that, and we appreciate everyone's patience. And Eyvettee, I'm sorry if you did feel a bit rushed, but I'm glad that we got you on there and your presentation was there. I just wanted to remind everybody that all of the presentations that are being presented today can be downloaded from Hightail. And if anybody needs that link, we can resend that out. And all of the presentations will also be recorded for those who are in this room. And if there was another presentation going on today that you wanted to see, FNPSS will be posting these videos to our YouTube channel after the event is finished. So I guess I would like to, Callan posted the Hightail link in chat. Thank you for that, Callan. And I just wanted to open up the floor now. If anybody has any questions for Kelly or for Eyvettee, please do I guess come off of mute if you want, or turn on your video and ask a question. We do have a couple of minutes before we move on to the next portion of our day. Okay, I don't think I'm not seeing any microphones come off mute in the participants list. So again, I would just like to raise my hands to Eyvettee and to Kelly. Thank you again for your time, and thank you for your presentations. It was a pleasure to have you guys here, and I enjoyed listening to your presentations today. So looking forward to kind of seeing everyone in the networking space later on this afternoon. And I think, oh, I do have a hand up from Jahan.
Hi, everyone. Sorry. Thank you, Yvette and Amory. I didn't want to jump in with my questions and take away time from anyone else who might have had them, but I can't help but pick Yvette's brain while she's here, as well as Kelly. I'm wondering, what is the responsibility for employers to compensate for employees for workspaces, internet utilities, anything like that if they're working from home? And I don't know if maybe that's just a practice check-in from sort of what you were talking about, Yvette, and making sure that conversation's open with the employee and everyone's on the same page, or if there's really a legal obligation to provide those kinds of things to employees. And I don't know if Kelly can speak to that too.
I guess I can jump in with the non-legal perspective. Again, I just kind of emphasize the communications, because I've operated within both capacities where, because I did some job transitioning throughout the pandemic, but the first one was like, do you need anything? We can buy the equipment, send it home to you, ensure that you have a setup. And as building off before, ensuring it was ergonomically correct to say, are you set up? Can you take a picture? Can we put that on file? Ensuring that all those pieces were there. And then another opportunity where it was like, are you comfortable working from home? Do you have everything? We don't really require it, but if you're sound. So again, I feel like early communication and understanding from that piece, but I couldn't speak towards the legal piece.
Sorry, maybe Callan, are you able to just unmute Kelly's line? Oh, no, I see she's live now.
Am I there? Okay.
Yes, we got you. Thank you.
Great. Sorry about that. I'm having all kinds of technical issues today. There is actually tax implications. There's tax availability. If employees are working from home for a certain portion of the year, they are entitled to make claims through the tax.
Right, but also the compensation then comes through the tax system. So if employees were working in a tax-free position because they're working for a band office, for example, on reserve supporting their community, then there is no other requirement to have to pay for internet or things like that legally. It's just a conversation with the employee, like a good tip.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that side. If there were no tax implications, I apologize.
Thank you very much, everyone, for letting me jump in with my question.
We have a question from Madeline. So if you wanted to unmute and start your video, Madeline, you're more than welcome.
Oh, hello. I just wanted to say that I really like the presentation and thank you for sharing all the resources and great tips. I know that there's going to be a huge change when individuals are heading back to the workplace, and the dynamics are going to be very different. What advice would you provide managers in preparing for that change, preparing their employees for that change? Should we start talking about it now, or like how early should we get planning for the change? Because I do anticipate quite a bit of resistance, given that we've gone from a lockdown to now seeing a transition back to work.
Sure, I could like jump in. I feel like the earlier communication, the better. I found within, I mostly do community-based work now as well. And I find that sometimes the theory is like people want to be heard. And to provide that rationale, sometimes we do need to be in the office as the work continues without a doubt. But I feel there's certain things that just don't happen that happen in the office. The water cooler chats, the small like, hey, do you have 5 minutes? The opportunity for collaboration and connections and talking with other departments and overhearing the side conversation is vital to an organization. To be able to brainstorm and collaborate, I feel like are great reasons why we connect in the office. But I feel like the more that we listen to people, the more once they are like, okay, well, I let that out, my stress is gone, we give in space and we acknowledge it, that eventually it's going to be like, yeah, going back to a normal life, to being able to see each other and have some 5-minute, I'm not too sure where your community is, but to be able to go down the street, maybe have coffee or lunch again, will provide a level of normalcy. And figuring out how to get there, because in our minds, we have a pathway there, but the pathway may look different. Maybe they want to start with a few get-togethers in an open field and just having small little chats and dialogue and reflecting on their pandemic experience. Maybe it's going for a team lunch. But again, being mindful of whatever the restrictions are lifted instead of going straight to the office. Maybe it's providing consistent messaging with all the managers, and really talking about the management team and listening to their struggles first before going back, ensuring that it's not too employee driven, to saying, hey, managers, what are your concerns? What are your barriers? And creating a unified vision, so at least it's consistent. So one manager's not saying one thing, another manager's not saying another thing. But again, this is where we're at. This is how we can move forward and give weight to everyone's experience. Again, I will always advocate to incorporate time for healing with any project with Indigenous people, to ensure that we create space to recognize. And it's going to take time. And I feel like the earlier we start communicating, start listening to people, mapping it out together and saying, being honest, well, if you don't want to come back to the office, well, then what? How can we get you back to the office? Like, is it going to take longer? Is it not going to take longer? And how do we herd people together? I mean, I personally wouldn't want to be the black sheep and everyone's herding off from me. I'd be like, well, hey, I want to come to staff lunch too. So maybe I will come, sooner to work, right? And maybe it's just trying to figure out different ways. But if we can be accommodating, listening, and trusting, I feel like, again, we can move forward together.
Thank you very much for sharing your positive approach. I really like it. Thank you very much.